What's going on, Farewell fans? MNG here. And today, when we do our interviews, I always try to provide you with some of the most latest and greatest information that's going to help you be better, that's going to motivate you, that's just going to and probably touch some areas that you probably never even thought about. And then I want to have some inspirational stories that go along with that as well. So today we have Matt Rogers here, and he's going to sit here and he's going to talk to us, and we're going to have some good dialogue, good conversation. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, MNG. Thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem. Thank you for coming on to the show. Hey, so before we get started, this is rare that I ever have another fellow podcaster on the show. I have to put it out there. I have to put it out there because it rarely ever happens that I have another podcaster on the show that we can talk podcaster shop.
And let me tell you something. I need it. I need as much shop talk as I could get.
And, all right, look, Farrell fans, I'm going to tell you, in a podcast space, is very supportive, but it's rare that you come across every other podcast and y'all just get the chance to interview each other and talk. Like, it's difficult because we have busy schedules. Like, we're busy. So, Matt, just for a little bit, can you just kind of tell me about your podcast? What's your podcast about?
Yeah, it's called Significant Coaching with Matt Rogers, and I interview college coaches all over the country, all sports. Every once in a while, I have a college athlete or a college recruit on. Every once in a while, like we have a university president coming up to talk about the NCAA changes and rules and all those crazy things that are happening at the NCAA level. But typically, it's me having a conversation with another college coach.
Okay.
Talking about their program. And then we followed up with a bonus episode. So that comes out on Fridays, our coaching episode. And then we do a bonus recruiting episode on Mondays where we just talk to families about college recruitment to help their son or daughter through the process.
Okay. So when you talk about the process, and I know, we're here to talk about something else, but I'm very intrigued because what you're doing is very interesting, because I had another question before my last question. So when you're going to talk to these families and you talk about the process and, they're going into these different sports programs and everything, and, you're teaching them about the NCAA and everything, like what are some of the pressures or the excitement that you see when you're talking to these families? I know some people I know some students are like, I'm excited, I get to go and play basketball, I'm going to the college that I want to be in, but maybe they're not looking at like the academic portion of it. Maybe, what are some things that you can highlight? There are some of the things that you see that comes from like the excitement and the pressures.
Well, for me, it's all about helping kids really figure out their self-worth. I know that's a pretty generic term, but I want them to understand their value.
Okay.
So most kids, the biggest obstacle is just, am I good enough to play? Mm-hmm. Am I good enough for a coach to look at me? How do I put myself in front of the right coaches? So a big part of what we do is just getting them to understand who they are as a student and as an athlete, and make sure they have that drive, that commitment to say, you know what, I'm going to really work on my grades. I'm going to really work on my nutrition, my health. I'm going to get my 8 hours of sleep every night. I'm going to be that kid that asks questions, and isn't afraid to fail. And that's a big part of what we're doing when I'm talking to these college coaches, is getting kids and mom and dad and high school coaches to understand these college coaches aren't gods. They're not omniscient. They're not all powerful. They're doing their job. They're trying to find great kids for their university, and they're trying to find kids that fit their program. So getting kids to understand that there's probably, if you're a good ball player, if you're a good soccer player, basketball player, baseball player, volleyball player, there's probably a college out there that'll be excited about you. And there's probably 10 or 12 of them.
Right. So now let me ask you this. Now, this is going to be like my zinger question. I believe it's called the NIL.
Yep.
The NIL.
Name, image, likeness. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that also part of the conversation as well for these college students? Because now college students are making significant money, going to college, playing and everything, and getting deals. Obviously you have to be top tier. You couldn't just be some, run of the mill, just like in the NBA. If you're a role player, you're not going to get contracts or anything like that. Like, you have to be the star. You have to be the person that carries a team or make an impact or do something. So I know that's going through a lot of college players' minds is, I may be able to take care of my family, going into these situations. And again, that's speaking to the pressure, going into these situations, maybe be able to take care of my family without having to even think about going to the NBA.
Yeah. The problem with the conversation, and this is somebody that's been a teacher and a coach for a long time, an athletic director for a long time, is that NIL only affects less than 1% of every kid that goes to college.
Okay.
So that less than 1% is typically fantastic. They're going to play Division I. It's very rare when any kid, Division II is just starting to get their fingers into NIL. They're just starting that. And most of that's going to change in a year because the laws that Congress just put in place, and the NCAA commissioner, the person they put in charge to kind of deal with all this, everything's going to change in the next year. But the kids that are uber talented, that 6'8" point guard, that 6'8" kid that can go right, left, can jump out of the gym, that 6'4" middle hitter that plays at Texas or Penn State. Those kids are walking into universities, big universities that have huge boosters, huge corporate sponsors, and they have money. So they can really take care of a kid. I'm talking to Division I football coaches, and their third string linebacker is getting $4,000 or $5,000 a month. I mean, how many of us adults would raise our hand and say, sign me up for that? Sign me up to be the bench to make $4,000 to $5,000 a month.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a crazy world, and I try not to live in it. I would say 95% of my clients, the kids and families that I work with one-on-one, they're probably going to play junior college, D3, NAI, or Division II. Now, I had 2 Division I athletes this year, and they're going to places where they're not even going to have to worry about NIL. One's going to the Air Force Academy, going to play Division I football. The other one's going to the Naval Academy, and they're going to play Division I. They're going to run Division I track. So for the next 9 years, they're going to be on salary just because they're going to be a part of the government. They're going to be military students, Yeah. So it's a really tough conversation, and I always bring it back to families that ask me about it. Is that your goal? Is that your goal to make money, or is it your goal for your son or daughter to get to college, get a great education, be around people that are going to help them become the adults you want them to be? Or is it more important that they're making $10,000 a month and it doesn't really matter the environment?
Right.
And most parents, I don't know if you have kids, but most parents are going, oh, no, I want the education. I want them to be a good person. But at the end of the day, how do you walk away from 10, 20, 30,000 a month to go to school and somebody to pay you for it?
That's true. That's hard to walk away from, especially when you may come from a middle class family or whatever the case is, whatever family you come from, or maybe you just want your own money and you're thinking about all the things that you can do with this money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up lower than middle class. My dad was a barber. He charged $4 a haircut for most of his career. So we never had any money. I think the most my dad ever made was like $20,000 in a year, as a barber. And that's cutting 50 heads a day, from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So my parents, it was all about education. You're going to college, you're going to get a degree. But I'm not sure what they would have said if somebody would have said, hey, we're going to give your kid $20,000 a month to come to school and play ball. I think it would have been hard for us to say no to that because that would have changed our life.
Right. You're
Right?
right.
It would have completely changed our life.
No. I agree with you. Now, it's one thing that you said that kind of caught my interest when you said that NIL is only about 1%, and it's primarily with Division One schools.
Right.
So now I don't watch NCAA. Okay, I'm being honest. I don't watch NCAA. I watch it probably around like March Madness, and then after
Yeah.
that, you know, I have nothing to do with it. So here's my so if NIL's only pretty much Division 1, like what is taking long for all the other divisions to kind of jump on board, or is it more political than anything?
It's just about value.
Okay, value. Okay.
Right? It's like anything else. It's like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is going to make $20-30 million a movie because the production company knows that people are going to go watch Tom Cruise.
Yes.
Denzel Washington's going to make $30 million a movie because they know that people are going to go watch. It doesn't matter what the movie is. You're going to go watch Denzel Washington. You're going to go watch Tom Cruise, right?
Yep.
So that's where the NIL, really the heart of it began, is we had these really fantastic athletes that everybody was trying to get their autograph. They could sell their autograph as a sophomore in college for $200. They could sign a jersey and somebody would pay $200 for it and then put it on eBay and maybe get $400 for it. So this is where it all started, is these kids who were poor or middle class, there was opportunities for them to make money on their own, on their name or their image or likeness. And the NCAA wasn't allowing that.
Okay.
So what's happened is those kids that are famous or have the ability to sell a product or make some money on their own, those kids went to court and they won. And now it's a part of the NCAA where kids can make money off of those things. So, but if you're a Division II shooting guard or a Division II quarterback, how many people know your name? KFC's not calling you.
Yeah.
AT&T's not calling you and say, hey, we want you to do a commercial.
True.
But if you're the quarterback at USC or the quarterback at Ohio State, you're a Heisman winner. Those companies want to use your name. So you got to be really talented. You got to have some fame, ability. You got to have a following. And we're seeing so many of these college kids now, they're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, and they've got 2 million followers.
Yeah.
I mean, just being on YouTube and doing a clip every day, they're making $500,000, $1 million a year just by doing videos every day. So it's great. It's great because those kids now can make money, but very few kids are going to have that ability, and I'll tell you a quick story. I just got off the phone with a Division I coach.
Okay.
And he said, Matt, our guys, we got 4 seniors that have been making $20,000 a month since they got here. Okay. They've been making close to $400,000 a year being on our basketball team. And he said, 4 of those guys, they're going to get the carpet pulled out from under them when they leave here, because all of a sudden those checks stop coming.
Yep.
And none of them are NBA players. None of them are going to get drafted. And now they got to go out in the real world and those checks aren't coming anymore.
Yeah.
Now what? So that's the concern. And that's what the government and Congress and NCAA and the coaches, that's what they're trying to fix. They're trying to get this to a point where if you can earn more money, great, do it. But let's be smart about it. Let's make sure we're preparing these kids for life after sports, life after college. So they're not bankrupt. They're not trying to figure out their life. They're not trying to figure out, okay, I don't have a degree because I didn't work hard in the classroom. What do I do?
I agree. Because here's the thing. When you give a child money, I'm not even going to say a child, but if you get a kid fresh out of high school money that may or may not have had a job, that has no focus and mastered their craft and is building on that craft, and then you drop a whirlwind of money, more money than they have ever seen, into their lap, they're gonna just spend it all.
Yeah.
Because their mindset is that it's going to come back. Now, you may have that one or two outlier that is responsible with money, that understands fiscal responsibility, and is going to do everything they're going to need to do with it. But for the others, for the larger percent of it, they're gonna stay to school those 4 years. They're gonna get their education. They're gonna play basketball, get whatever education they can, as long as they stay on the basketball and continue to get their scholarship. If they have a scholarship, get that money, and then what? Because if it's not invested, you're gonna have the newest of new cars. You're gonna spend money on your friends. You may have a girlfriend. You're gonna take out a nice restaurants. A nice $5,000-$10,000 chain, and maybe a flashy car, flashy clothes, every latest Jordan you can find, and all of that stuff. And then after you get out of college, what's the plan then? Because if you don't get drafted into the NBA, you don't go play overseas. That's a possibility. You can go and do that, but it may or may not equate to the same amount of money that you're getting over here.
Not even close.
And you still gonna have to kind of get yourself to even be known over there.
Exactly. Yeah.
NBA stars go over there and get paid, all kinds of dollars because they know who they are. They seen them in the league, seen what they can do. Then they just go overseas and just dominate. So they're gonna get the money.
Yeah.
But if you're fresh out of college, nobody knows who you are, as you have stated, and then you go over here to this foreign country and you decide you want to play in their league. You got to go in over there and prove yourself. You just got to prove yourself in the NBA. You're not going to just go over there and just get some large contract and think, oh, I'm about to live a life up. No, it doesn't. It's not going to work that way.
It all comes back to value. Too many kids don't know their worth. They don't know their value. They don't know how to increase their value. They're trying to do what their friend did or somebody they saw on Instagram do, and it doesn't work that way. You got to have a great work ethic. You have to have high character. You have to have a personality. You have to be somebody that somebody wants to be around. And you talk about these NBA guys that go overseas. If you're going to make money, you got to put butts in the seats.
Yeah.
If you want China, India, Greece, Italy, if you want one of those teams to pay you, you have to be a proven commodity that you're going to help fill their stadium and sell popcorn and sell hot dogs, and people are going to buy tickets. And so it's again, it comes down to who you are and who you want to be and how you want to represent yourself. And it used to start when you were 22. And maybe if you were lucky, it started when you're 21. Now it's starting when you're 16, 17.
Yeah.
And most of these kids, like you said, they're just not ready for it. They're not ready for that pressure. They're not ready for being such a focal part of this world. They haven't figured out who they are yet.
No, I agree. They have not figured out who they are yet, which leads me to another point, because I was talking about this, and to answer your question earlier, I do have a kid. I have a son. Having a conversation with him, and he'd be 19 this year, and he had asked me, could he go to Tennessee by himself? And I wanted to travel and everything, but then I started to think, I was like, I don't think that he has the social awareness to go to another state by himself. And as much as I would love for him to go out there and kind of learn and kind of experience it for himself, I don't want him to. Like, not trying to be a helicopter parent, but just trying to teach him, like, there's still some growth that you need before you could just go off and just venture into the world. And some things you can learn the hard way, and some things will just put your life at risk if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So and that was a recent conversation that we had, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't know how I feel about that. But man, I got one for you. So we talked about the NCAA stuff. We talked about that, but let's go ahead and bring it back in. So, but I want to know your story. So, you're mentoring these teens and guiding these families through this college and recruitment process. But how did you get here? Like, what made you say, you know what? Let me start helping these high school kids and family, these high school kids and their parents transition into this college process? Like, and then, like, how did you get there? What was the start?
Well, the short story is I was a head college basketball coach and a college athletic director for the better part of 15 years. And when my wife and I had our second child, it was getting harder and harder for me to be a good dad and a good coach and all those things that you have to be up on. You have to put your effort into. And we decided that I was going to walk away from coaching when we had my son about 12 years ago. And I was going to be a stay-at-home dad for a while, and I got an opportunity to be a scout. And I started scouting and helping lots and lots of families. I ended up over 10 years, I helped 4,000 kids go to college as a scout. And I just got to the point where I didn't really want to work for anybody anymore. I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to put time into kids and really build relationships with them and really help them, mentor them through this high school to college journey. So I sat down and wrote a book called Significant Recruiting, the playbook for prospective college athletes, published it about a year and a half ago. And it's been an amazing turnout. We've had so many families read it, so many families give feedback. And through that, I started a business where I started working with families one-on-one to really guide them through the process. I only work with about 20 families a year. But for me, it's a great joy because I have two kids. I have a 12 and a 16-year-old. So I get to be the dad, but also be the mentor and the buddy for these other teenagers and help them figure it out, help them figure out who they are. And I love it. I just really enjoy giving them those things that I didn't have as a kid. I didn't have anybody that said, this is how you go through the recruiting process. This is your strengths. These are the things you should be proud of. And these are the things you got to work on. You need a little kick in the pants, Matt. My dad was really good at giving me the kick in the pants. Okay. And I had two older brothers and two older sisters that were really good at that too. But there was nobody that really understood. My siblings and I, we were the first in our family to ever go to college. So it was all new for us. So I try and be that person I wish somebody would have been for me, if that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense because there's only so many people in my family that has went to college and graduated. And I know of a few that have, but by the time that I was going to college, it wasn't going to college wasn't preached or a conversation.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't a conversation, there was nobody that actually walked you through the process. And even though you had counselors and everything, they only knew and could do so much within the time frame that they had because they only wanted to really work 8 to 5 and then they wanted to go. They didn't want to have no additional conversation with no teenagers.
Right.
And then you would talk to financial aid, and financial aid will only give you so much information because then you end up getting trapped up with parent plus loans, and then you get these unsubsidized loans, you get these subsidized loans, and they tell you the terms, and the terms sound good. Yeah, they're only going to charge you 1 or 2% of interest. That sounds great, but when you're $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in debt, 1 or 2%, it may not be much for like $1,000 or $10,000, but when you start to go up in tiers, it started to be a lot more.
Yeah.
The percentages start to actually matter. And then what they don't tell you is that you don't get to control what your payments are going to be because you got to fill paperwork out and they have to actually approve what you needed, the payments that you're asking for. They automatically give you payments and say, yeah, you're going to pay $1,000 a month and you're only 6 months out of college. You don't have the experience. You don't have the job. You don't have any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So being guided through the process is difficult. Just when me and my son sat down for FAST for last year, the lady was having a conversation with us and, she was talking a good game. But the greatest thing was that because I had already went through the process, I asked the right questions. No, we're not going to do that. Oh, well, he can get a Parent Plus loan. Yep, we're not going to do that.
Right.
I put my mom $5,000 in debt by doing that,
Yeah.
and I had to pay that loan off to
Same
get it
here.
off her
Yeah.
credit report.
Yeah. Same here.
Had we had the real conversation about what that was actually going to translate into, so far as education and so far as about repayment, I would have just went and got a job. Well, I had a job at the time, but I would just put money on my books for school than to wait at the end. I would tell anybody, if you go to school, just pay your semesters off. Just invest
Right.
all your money into your semesters because it's not worth getting the loans.
It's not now. Now when they accumulate and they compound that interest after time, and all of a sudden, maybe you thought you were only going to have 20,000, it turned into 35,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big part of what I do with families is help them. There's so many mistakes that my parents made that I've seen my siblings make with their kids to college. Just helping them. This is how you fill out the FAFSA. These are the things you don't have to give them. These are the things that you can give them to help that number decrease. And there's so many scholarships out there that most families don't even know they can apply for.
Yeah.
In the last 10 years, there's been billions of dollars of scholarship that nobody applies for. So that's a big part of what I do is if somebody's going to pay me, I want you to get a return on investment. I want to make sure that when your kid goes to college, you're paying a heck of a lot less than you would have without me. So, and there's just a lot of tricks that I've learned over the years that you can do, questions you can ask financial aid, things that they have that they can help lower the cost if you just ask the right questions, like you said. So I love that you've learned that. I love that you're doing that with your son. And I love that we're having this conversation. Because too many families get that financial aid letter back and they go, well, that's what we got to pay. No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
And you're absolutely right about that, because when you get that number, as you had spoke of, you get that number and it tells you how much that you have to contribute. And then you're looking at your bank account, you're looking at your parents, because let's be honest, you're looking for your parents to co-sign. Like, can you co-sign? Can you help me? Can you do something? And some of these parents just they're not in a position to help their kids fulfill their dreams to go to college. So then you got to resort to loans.
Yeah.
But nobody is sitting. Speaking of scholarships, I was telling my son since 10th grade, apply for scholarships. He was like, well, it's too early. It's never too early. Apply for scholarships. Because as you start to apply for some, you start to open up the doors to other scholarships and have better opportunities for more. So you got to keep applying. There was one story where this young lady applied for so many scholarships. It literally paid off 4 years of college and then some.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of these applications take 30, 40 minutes tops.
Yes.
So, it goes back to what I teach when we talk about executive function skills. Set an alarm on your phone. Every Thursday night at 7:00, that alarm goes off and it says, apply for a scholarship. Well, take 30 minutes every Thursday night, Sunday afternoon. I don't care. Fill out a scholarship. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. But if that 30 minutes turns into $2,000, are you glad you did it?
Exactly.
Heck yes. That's $2,000. That's $2,000 you don't have to find. That's $2,000 you don't have to take in a loan. That's $2,000 you don't have to pay back after you graduate.
That's a fact. And I don't know what website. I've heard a lot of different websites that have a list of scholarships, but there are a lot of these big companies have scholarships. Now, Coca-Cola's got scholarships. Walmart has scholarships. Target has scholarships. There's all these different places that have scholarships that for your education that you can go to and fill out and everything. Even if you have to fill out, even if you got to do an essay.
Yeah.
What's the essay on your life? You talk about your life to everybody else.
Yes.
But you won't do the essay to say your life to get you a scholarship that can help you in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now you're a husband, father of two, business owner, and a mentor. Now that's a lot of different roles right there. how does those roles shape the way you show up for young people and families you serve?
I think it allows me to show up with a lot of empathy and to really understand who they are. I was raised in the Catholic Church. It, every Sunday it was about walking the shoes of another person before you critique, before you argue, before you lose your temper. Think about what those people are going through before you have an opinion of them. So I try to go into every situation with a lot of empathy and really try and understand what's this kid going through? What are these parents going through? I've got a family I'm working with right now. Dad lost his job a year ago, and mom's had major medical problems. So their dad is crazy, and the girl I'm working with has a medical situation herself, but she's a great athlete, a great student, a great kid. So, we've really had to take different routes for them to make sure we found the right place for her, where they could afford it. There wasn't going to be any debt. And we just had to be really unique and really smart about it. So to answer your question, it's just being empathetic and really, really trying to walk in the shoes of everybody I work with before we do anything.
I can understand that. And one thing I want to say is thank you for doing that, because if you wasn't guiding them and assisting and helping them, this student wouldn't be going.
Yeah.
This student would feel like their dreams of being an athlete in college would be like null and void.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And I know that each family is battling something, and some battles aren't visible, and I'm just amazed, and because they say that you never really understand until you walk a mile in somebody else's shoes,
right?
And just hearing that story and hearing what you're doing, it made me like, dang, I wonder how many people, how many other people out there are struggling that needs this same type of assistance, that need this same type of access. How many other people out there is doing what Matt Rogers is doing right now on the level that you're doing it on. Not only are you out there being, a mentor and guiding families, but you're also doing it through a podcast as well.
Yeah.
And that takes significant time. That takes a lot of energy, diligence, determination. I can't do anything but applaud what you're doing. I mean, if I had this when I was growing up, it would have way more benefit, not just from the athletic portion, but just from the guidance portion, just the understandable piece of it, of just knowing the process and being guided through it. Like, there's a lot of, yes, this is phenomenal to me.
Well, a lot of it comes down to just being lucky. I grew up in a small town, small high school, public high school. My parents didn't have any money. I wore hand-me-downs. I wore my brother's pants and shirts until I graduated from college,
Yeah, I had hand-me-downs too.
It's so for me, it was for that kid to get a head high school coaching job at 25 and then get a head college job at 26 and then be named an athletic director at 27. I mean, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to kids like me, So for me, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and I've never been wealthy. We've never made a lot of money, but I'm making more than my folks did. We're able to do some things that they couldn't do for us. We're able to do for my kids. So for me, I take that luck, that grace, that blessing, whatever you want to call it, those opportunities I had, and I want to share it. That's why I wrote the book, because, families go to a recruiting service and they ask for $5,000-$6,000. My book walks them through every step of college and college recruiting and financial aid, and they can get it for $15. I have a free blog that I write every week. I've been writing this blog for a year and a half about college recruiting, coaching, parenting. I do the podcast, and you well know there's not much money in podcasting. For me, there's zero money in podcasting, So the time I put in is really to make sure that if I can help one kid, if I can help one family accomplish some things that my parents couldn't do for me, man, I sleep better at night.
Yes, definitely. So let me ask you this. Now, earlier you was talking about self-worth,
Yeah.
knowing your worth. And what does that actually look like in practice?
It's a great question because it can be hard to define. And a lot of it starts with knowing how you want to be treated,
Okay.
right? When you think of your son, think of my daughter, I want them walking out the door every day and not letting anybody push them over and push them around or dictate how they feel about themselves. My kids will call each other a name, and the younger one will look at me and go, "Dad, what are you going to do about that?" And I go, "Okay, she called you dumb. Are you dumb?" He goes, "No, I'm not dumb." Then why are you letting it bother you?
Mm.
When you know that you're a smart kid and you know she's just trying to get into your craw, like she's just trying to get you upset.
Yep.
And you're letting her, okay? That's where self-worth starts, is knowing this is who I am. I'm a good person. I work hard. I'm kind. I'm generous. I work hard to learn every day. Nobody can take that away from me. And I think for me, MNG I didn't have a great high school coach. He was a great coach, just didn't have a great relationship with him. He's really hard on us kids, and back in the 80s and 90s, coach said, "Do this," you did it. You didn't complain. You didn't whine. There wasn't a way out, and then my college coach was kind of like that too, and so for me, I had to learn really the hard way that my self-worth was mine. No one could take it away from me. I could give it. I could be depressed. I could be disappointed. I could be small, and I could give that self-worth away. Or I could go, you know what? This is who I am. You're not taking this away from me. So it's a big thing that I teach with kids is just know that this is who you want to be is great. Okay. That doesn't mean you're not going to grow. That doesn't mean you're not going to get better. That doesn't mean you don't have a lot to learn, but nobody can take away your value that you have to this world. And you just have to decide you're going to keep putting it out there. You're going to keep getting better. You're going to keep putting the time in to be happy.
Yeah, that conversation sounds familiar. And the reason why I say it sounds familiar is because I can remember my mentors having a conversation with me about how I felt about what people were saying, what people were doing, and everything. Yeah. And it also sounds familiar because, I had the same conversation with my son as well. Just not caring about what other people think. Knowing that you have a value that some people can be intimidated by and jealous of.
Yeah.
That conversation sounds 100% familiar, like through and through.
I think it comes back to teaching empathy, and it sounds like you're really good at this as a dad. I was bullied as a kid. Yeah. Sometimes my kids will come home and, they'll be in tears because somebody said something, and I'll go, we can get mad at that kid. We can get really mad. I can go talk to his parents. I can go talk to the principal. But let's stop for a second. Why do you think they're doing this to you? What do you think is going on at home that they feel like it's okay to treat you poorly? Is it possible that somebody's treating them poorly at home? Is it possible that they're not getting the hugs and the I love yous and I got your backs that you're getting in our house? That kid's not getting any of that. That kid's not being told, hey, go to school and respect everybody when nobody's respecting them. So a big part of being a teacher and a coach and a mentor for me is always taking a breath, taking a step back and going, okay, what's going on with this kid? What's going on with this adult? Why do they feel this way? Why are they treating me or somebody else this way? And I think the more we think like that, the more we can get through the day a little bit better. And the more we're going to be a little bit more courageous in our life when we know maybe there's somebody that I can help. Maybe instead of getting mad at this kid, I can go, hey, what's wrong? Why are you mad at me? What's going
Right.
on in your life?
Right.
You know, I'm here to be your friend, man. I don't want to hurt you. You know, why do you want to hurt me? What have
Right.
I ever done to you? I don't want I don't want to treat you that way. Why would you want to treat me that way? And if we can get a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old to have those kind of conversations, you know, what happens? You know, unfortunately, we live in a political world right now where anger is good. Whatever you feel, express it, even if it's hurt somebody, right?
Yeah.
And it's a shame because we want those role models to teach differently. We
Yeah.
want our role models to be kind and generous and humble, and
Yeah.
there isn't enough of that on TV right now. There's not enough of that in Congress and wherever you want to look.
It is that.
So whatever you and I can do as dads, you know, and with our platform of our podcast to kind of share that and teach that and
Yes.
demonstrate that kindness, you know, it's a win for that day, I think.
You're absolutely right. It is a win because we can say that there's not enough kindness in the world. Because we see it in social media, we see it on TV, we see it in the movies. We see all these examples of what society either looks like or the imitation of society. And then there are times where we actually see a utopia of society in social media and it looks good, but the reality sets in once you turn the phone off, once you walk outside and you see that utopia is not there.
Yeah.
There's always a situation. There's always a death. There is always a fight. There's always somebody stealing. There's always somebody that's going to try to take, and all these other variations and variables that can happen as well within life. And then you just sit there and you just kind of soak it all in. It's just like, this is the reality of what it is, and we can choose any mode or platform of escape that we want to in order to harness positivity and be optimistic. And but then when you're overly optimistic, you miss some of the things. Well, when you're overly optimistic, they call you gullible.
There's a fine line there in there. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
overly optimistic, you're gullible, and if you're a realist, you're pessimistic.
Yeah.
And when you try to have a delicate balance of both of them, then you get called either one, depending on what you're talking most about.
Yeah.
So you can walk around with this armor of self-worth and confidence. If you walk around with a lot of confidence, you call it cocky.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade.
That's right.
If you walk around and you say that you have self-worth, somebody turn around and tell you that you ain't nothing. You have a if you speak positive and highly about yourself, then you're arrogant. Yeah. So you build up this self-worth, and then you have those people out there that are so intimidated and jealous that they're willing to knock you down behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm writing my blog tonight for the week. I think the title's going to be "Give the Hug," because it's going to be for parents. My dad was a good dad. He raised me the best way he could, but he wasn't a hugger. There wasn't a lot of I love yous. It was a lot of tough love.
Yeah.
And I think the more as parents, we can make the biggest difference in this world by making sure our kids get a hug every day, make sure they know they're loved every day.
Yeah.
Even when they're driving us bonkers and we're pulling our hair out, that they don't leave the house without them hearing, I love you. And
yes.
Getting that hug and getting that kiss on the forehead, and knowing, hey, we're always here for you. Because I think the biggest problems in our world is there's too many of those adults that didn't get that.
That's true.
They didn't get that love. They didn't get that support. And I think the more we do it as parents, and when we have the opportunity, like I'm blessed to have, where I get to do it with other people's kids and just let them know, hey, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're doing great. Yeah, we're going to fail a little bit. We're going to make some mistakes. We're going to stub our toe.
Yeah.
But that's a part of this. Part of being great is failing. You know,
Yeah.
every great athlete, every great person that's walked this earth will tell you they had to fail to succeed. And so that
And
hug and that I love you is so valuable for us parents, you know, and I can't preach it enough, you know.
is as a parent, as a child receiving it from a parent, is validation,
Yeah.
is comfort,
Yeah.
is saying that that you see me here, and I'm not the person that you come and talk to, or you come in that I'm not the person in your house just taking from the household.
Yeah.
Because kids don't contribute anything until they get older. So
Yeah.
they eat all the food and everything.
Yeah.
From a parent standpoint, talking to a kid, it opens up communication. It opens up understanding. It builds trust. It builds confidence. You can have the conversation with your kids, but if you're not telling them that, hey, if you're not validating the things that they're doing, that lets them know that they're on the right path. Say, hey, I'm proud that you stepped up and you did that. Now, I'm proud that you're bringing these grades home and you're staying on the right path, and not just saying, hey, well, why you didn't bring this grade home, and no, why are you doing this, or no, why did you do that, and why did you, instead of always berating and belittling them, and just but congratulating and saying, I'm proud that you did this, and say, you know what, I love you because you're my child. I love you because, you are doing X, Y, Z. I love you just because I love you,
Yeah.
and give them a hug and say, if you ever need anything, I am here for you.
Yeah.
And I'm one phone call away, one step away, whatever. That gives them that reassurance that whatever they're going through, you are going to stand by them regardless of the case. You're going to support them unconditionally, 100%. And I think that there are a far majority of kids that don't have that. They may have parent support and parent understanding, but that I love you and I'm proud of you, I feel like that's a way more secure validation and reassurance than just, great job, keep on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm only going to get validation as long as I'm continuously doing what you want me to do. But what if I want to go and do what I want to do? Are you still going to support that decision unconditionally?
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a lot of kids right now who were raised with the I love you, or raised with the hug. And then all of a sudden, mom and dad find out that they're gay or they're trans or they don't have the same political beliefs or they don't have the same religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that parent who loved this kid and always demonstrated, now all of a sudden they're offended and they're taken back and they're upset and they're frustrated. And part of being a parent, and this is the hard thing, and I know you can relate to it because you and I talked about it before we started. Sometimes it's hard to be okay with the path our kids are going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be their sexual orientation or their politics or their religion. It's just, oh gosh, I wish you wouldn't major in art history. You're not going to ever make any money. Well, I love art history. I want to be a DJ. Okay. You're never going to make any money off it. Well, maybe they will,
Right.
You gotta support them on the journey where their passion is. And that is really hard to do as a parent sometimes. I was an athlete my whole life. I've been a college coach my whole life. My whole life is about sports. My 12-year-old boy, he could care less about sports. He
Yep.
wants nothing to do with sports. But man, oh man, is he good with computers, and is he smart as a whip with math? And he's got really good friends. He's a sensitive kid. He doesn't like physical contact. You know, he and I will wrestle, but put him on a soccer pitch or a basketball court. No, man, he don't want anything to do with it. You know, so that was hard for me for a long time. But, you know, I started going, but man, he's on his own path, and I can't affect that. I can't make his path harder. I gotta find a way to comfort him and support him and make it easier. And that's hard for us, a lot of us parents. You know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a path that I wanted my son to go down, and he chose a different path, and I was kind of like, I kept trying to negotiate, but he wanted to go down this particular path.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I hear you.
Negotiation not working. Let me just support him. Let me support him in his journey. Just let me do that. So let me ask you this: when you think about your podcast, your books, and coaching,
Yeah,
what's the bigger message and the legacy that you're hoping to leave behind?
it's a big question. I think for me, the legacy is just to be a good person on this planet. I know there's been times where I haven't been the person I wanted to be, and haven't been the coach or the teacher or the husband or the parent I wanted to be. But I've never stopped working at it. I've never stopped caring about being better. And for me, my legacy is going to be my kids. You know, if they're the type of adults that walk through a park and they see garbage on the grass, they pick it up and throw it away, even though it wasn't their garbage, I'm going to be proud, you know, and they teach their kids that, you know, when they see an elderly person or a pregnant woman trying to get into a door, or somebody's got 2 bags of groceries, and they open the door for that person and say, "Hey, how are you? Have a great day." You know, if they're that type of person, I'm going to be really proud. I'm going to be really happy. So for me, my legacy isn't probably going to be recruiting. It probably isn't going to be basketball. It isn't going to be coaching so much. It's going to be who those 2 kids in my house become when they become adults. And that's really why I do everything. I hope that makes sense.
That makes plenty of sense, because what I'm going to say behind that is that kids are the future.
Yeah.
They're going to carry on the wisdom that we have given them. And if we have given them no wisdom, they're not going to have anything to carry on.
That's right.
So, but Matt, thank you for coming on to this has been a great conversation. I don't know if the audience will really understand. Maybe the dads will. I think the dads understand. I don't know about the moms. I think the dads understand.
I think the moms will. The moms are the ones that are so good at all this stuff we're talking about. You know,
That is true.
they can boil it down to love and respect and kindness a lot better than us men can. You know, so
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, Matt, thank you for coming on to the show. Is there any last words you would like to go ahead and give to the Farewell fans?
If I can help anybody, if you're got a kid that's going to college, or you got a kid that wants to play sports, and I can help you, I do free sessions with any family that wants it. You can go to coachmattrogers.com. You can find my books. You can find my podcast. You can find my recruiting launchpad. If I can help you in any way, don't be afraid to ask. Send me an email, shoot me a message. I'm always happy to help. And thank you so much for doing this, MNG. I really respect you, and I'm so thankful that you thought enough of me to come on the show. But it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And we're going to put all the information down in the description so you have easy access to it. You won't have to rewind it back and try to write it down. You know, we're going to look out for you. We're going to put that in the description. But we're going to see you on the next go around. See you at the next interview. Peace.